he would take every opportunity to use it as a reason to reform you, you know, in some way, to cut away at some thick kind of haze that you live in, and you've been living in for years and years. And he said, your problem is that you're like a peon. You just, you get some instruction to do and you just do it as if you had no real personal investment in it. He said, that's not bhakti. You know, bhakti means, like when you're serving with a heart that's fully invested because of the love that you have for the person that you're serving. We don't just serve God, we serve God with a heart full of love. And it's actually the love that's accepted, not the service. And he said, I've asked you to invite that person because I really want that person to come. And if you really wanted that person to come as much as I do, that person would be coming. But you're just a peon. You just go and deliver the message. Your heart's not in it. It was like that. He said, now go back, you know, and ask him again. And so I did. And this time I said, he would really love to have you there. You're so dear to him. And, I went in, invested in it. And they said, oh, okay, well, then I'll come.
Mm.
And that's something that I've always carried that story with me and that lesson with me. That we don't just become these mechanical people. Even when we come to a practice that's all about the softening of the heart and the experience of genuine divine spiritual emotion, because we're habituated to move through this world, we get stuck right from the beginning of our life, go to school, do this stuff that your heart's not in. And you just get habituated to moving through life with a heart not fully invested in what you're doing. Why should we live a moment, where our heart's not fully invested in what we're doing? Everything that we do should be tied into that central purpose. And if it is, then we can always be serving with a full heart, and life becomes much more rich and much more meaningful.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Alachua, Florida, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily spiritual podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. It is Sunday, June 1st, 2025, and welcome to the show. What episode, Mara?
1615.
How do you know this every day and I don't? 1615.
Yeah.
Back in Alachua, last day here. What a great time here. And yesterday was graduation for my son. It was so cool to go to goes to this big high school, but there's so many devotees. And as they're reading the names, it's like Lakshman, Keshava, Surya Devi. It was so cool. And they were in the parking lot afterwards where all the kids were piled out and family members were greeting and giving flowers. There were so many devotees there in that area, greeting and relatives of devotees. It was such actually very cool scene. And I'm so proud of my son. Had a great day. And a great day teaching in Palm Grove. And yeah, it was a great weekend. And I'm wiped out, completely wiped out. How are you guys doing?
It's flooding where Mara's at, in your home.
Yeah, my basement flooded. Mara was in distress. The basement's flooded. There's a whole, I think a lot of houses flood upstate. You got to have sump pumps. You don't know what a sump pump is, do you, Kaustubha? These are things.
I learned a lot about sump pumps in the last 24 hours.
Sump pumps are a thing. It's a thing you got to get into. Anyway, she's sump pumping up there. I feel bad because it's a whole project when that happens, and I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mara. And she's not feeling well either,
And we have 20 people here for a retreat. The power went out the day before. It's been one of those weekends.
Mara gets like 2 more days of relaxation and then like a big handful van load of kids from teenage boys show up from Alachua.
But it's not relaxation, Raghunath.
She's not relaxing.
You got a
Well, you have
flood
2
going.
days where you have 2 days where you're just, yeah, it's not that much relaxation. But
No.
I think it's more relaxing than having, 10 teenage boys there.
We'll see.
We'll see. Anyway, that was good. Announcement this Saturday coming up. There is a kirtan festival going on at Super Soul Farm from 2 to 9 p.m. It's free. It's donation based, and we're going to just do kirtan constantly. And instead of treating it like an event, I'm treating it like a meditation. I really want to get into the holy name. You should come up for it maybe Saturday, Kaustubha.
Next Saturday?
Yeah, come on up. 7th.
Doubtful.
Okay. Alrighty.
Raghunath Swami's in town.
I'll put the link. There's an
Stuff going on.
RSVP link.
There's there's a RSVP. If you want to come, there's a RSVP link. You got a link because there's a limit.
And I'll
of
put
how
it in the
many people
show
we can have.
notes also. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, please come, people. We'd love to have Wisdom of the Sages. We have a nice community up here. Love to have you. Also, you want to hear some crazy news? Crazy news, people. Shelter got asked to play the LA Rath Yatra. It's happening. We are playing the Los Angeles Rath Yatra. I can't believe it, but I'm looking forward to it like crazy. And Wisdom of the Sages is doing a Wisdom of the Sages. We do a little retreat at Veda Yoga in Los Angeles. That's Friday night. And then Saturday day, we do a whole day of classes and kirtans and stories. And then Sunday's Rath Yatra. So we're really looking forward to that. It's not up to register for, but we'll send you to Veda Yoga if you want to come. But we did one last year. It was very, very fun. And this year, New York Rath Yatra, we want to say we're going to have a nice table and we're going to set up. We're going to do kirtan. And we just want to have constant kirtan happening the entire time. So everybody come out, support, hang with us, sit with us, sing with us, and it makes a big difference. And it's inspiring, not just to the people that walk by New York City, but to the whole Rath Yatra festival. Like, wow, who are these people? And this year, I really want a lot of our young kirtan leaders, and there's a lot that are like uninitiated, but they're dedicated to kirtan. I would love for them to come forward and sing a little. And it's a special time. So I'm looking forward to New York Rath Yatra, and that's happening June 14th. If you've never been there, it is quite wonderful. Any other announcements, Ms. Mayor?
No more announcements.
Okay.
No show tomorrow, though.
Okay, that's an important announcement.
Yeah, we got to do that one.
It's Q&A day, everybody. Welcome to the show. I try our best to answer your questions. And maybe we should just jump in now.
Let's do it.
Miss Mary, you got the questions?
Oh, yeah. Did you want me to ask him?
I think you should be the question person today.
Okay. We have a bunch of questions, and they come from our dear friend Chapu.
The whole series of questions.
Yeah.
All of the questions are from Chapu?
Yeah.
She asked every question. Or she's
Did you
from a
look at
sage
them,
group.
Raghunath?
Yeah.
She's from Prabhu, I just woke up. I'm
Okay.
like exhausted. I can barely stand.
It's a series of
Wasn't-
questions from her.
Okay.
It's a series
Yeah.
of questions, Raghunath.
Yeah.
All right. She writes, Haribo familia, buenos dias.
Buenos
Dear
dias.
Profes, sorry if I'm butchering your Spanish, Chapo. Thank you both so much for your incredible service. What you teach isn't just philosophy. It's an effective science that has truly come alive in my own life and in the lives of many people I know. I'm so grateful for all you do.
Thank you.
Today, I'd like to ask a few questions to hear more about your personal bhakti journey and what truly inspires you.
Okay.
All right, the first one, bhakti life's daily joy. What's one thing you absolutely love about living the bhakti way, and how does it make your everyday life genuinely better or more joyful?
There you go, Raghu. How's that for a question?
Great question. How does bhakti make? There's something in ritual, and there's something in spiritual. There's something in ritual, but there's something in spiritual ritual that is quite grounding. And I find a lot of my joy from just like a lifestyle, and perhaps that's where joy comes from. A lifestyle. It doesn't come from the excitement of adventure and travel. Even as I'm coming to Alachua, and I'm excited because there's such a big, thriving community here. you know, because of my schedule, my I'm a little bit off with my rituals. Waking up early. I love waking up early. I love chanting in the morning. I love reading in the morning. I love doing puja in the morning. There's something, it's not like it's because fireworks are going off, but there's something very deeply connecting and joyful. And if you can create a household like that and a family like that, or if you're single and you do that, it's very, very powerful. As a matter of fact, I think one of the tricks of if you're single and getting into this and getting a taste from it is, can you do this in a relationship? Or sometimes another trick may be, if you're in a relationship and the person's not into what you're into, can you somehow create a bubble of, a bubble of joy within that relationship? Maybe I can't say a bubble of joy because you might have a joyful marriage, but you know what I'm trying to say. If you're already in a relationship,
Yeah.
how can you? I think the question is, people are throwing pictures of JFK with a top hat on, and it's throwing me off here. I got to close my screen. Um, Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Relationships,
I'm gonna
bubbles.
blame John F. Kennedy for that. Um, yeah, if you're in a relationship, can you create that? Can you create that spiritual connection um, within your family? That's what I meant to say. Okay, that's what I meant to say. If you're single and you're getting that bubble of joy, that's one thing. And then when you get married, can you keep that and retain it? That was like sort of like the, and when you have kids, can you keep that and maintain it? That's where I see a lot of people who were brahmacharis struggling with as they become grihastas. And the next thing is, if you're getting to this within a family situation already, can you carve out special time that's just you and God time? And can that bleed outside of that bubble to the rest of your family? It naturally will. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, I froze there. Continue on.
Mara, in other words, you would like me to answer this question now?
Uh, yeah.
Okay.
Are we going to go back and forth? You don't have to answer this question.
No, no, I know. I'm happy
Felt
to
like
answer
that
this
was.
question. I'm just saying
that was-
I'm not continuing because I haven't even started yet. But Mara, could you read the question again?
Yeah. What's one thing you absolutely love about living the Bhakti way, and how does it make your everyday life genuinely better or more joyful?
Okay. About living the Bhakti way. Well, we're saying like the Krishna Bhakti way, right?
Mm.
And one thing that I absolutely love about it is that within the tradition, everything that's divine is there's a picture of it painted very vividly, like in great detail. And I think that's unique, you know, to understand, like for instance, in other spiritual traditions that speak of God, you hear something about God, but you don't get such a vivid picture.
Mm.
What is the afterlife like? Particularly like, in the state of salvation, what does it look like? You don't get such a vivid picture. What is God like? What does he look like? What does he act like? What are his attributes? What's his personality like? What's his heart like? This it's very vividly described in so many varieties in the Krishna Bhakti tradition and the broader tradition that stems from that. And what that does is, how does that affect my everyday life? When you practice Krishna Bhakti, it means that I think, like going back to what you were saying, like there's ritual, but this ritual is focused not just on God, but on Krishna, with his beautiful eyes and his smile and his
Mm.
flute, and and surrounded by a variety of loving devotees, the love of his parents, the love of his brother and his friends, the love of the gopis, and we have a vivid picture of who they are, how they dress, how they speak, their own individual characteristics and so on. All of that colors the entire culture. It largely is colored Indian culture because Indian culture so much grows out of the Bhakti Shastras. It grows out of Mahabharata and Ramayana and Bhagavatam. So when people, when people look at like a poster of, what do they call it? Incredible India or something like that, and you see, well, oh, it's such a colorful culture, and all that's grown out of the bhakti culture,
Mm.
you know. And in the bhakti culture, you get it in its most concentrated form. So when I wake up in the morning, I open up my altar and I see the form of Radha, the form of Krishna, the form of Sri Chaitanya. When I chant my mantra, I have a picture of them in my mind. It naturally arises. You
Mm.
know, when I go to cook, I'm using all forms of spices and vegetables and so on. Um, but all in connection, you know, to feeding a person who actually enjoys it. It's like it just kind of it makes all of your life vivid and colorful. You take it away to Vedanta, it's like their their focus is on that energy of the divine that has no attributes. So there's nothing there, in the ultimate sense, to color one's life in a beautiful way.
Mm.
In bhakti, you just can't turn away from it. The way we, the way that within fashion, within music, within art, within poetry, within architecture, the whole thing's colored by it, and it lights up life. It turns life from black and white into full color.
I like your answer. I like your answer. I I didn't, I feel like I didn't open the door. You sort of opened the door and explained why the rituals are substantial. I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, rituals are good. They make me feel joyful. But yeah, it's the Krishna factor. You're cooking for a person, and the
yeah,
person looks like this.
yeah.
And you open your altar, and this is how he's dressed, and he's such a charming, and that becomes the object of your meditation throughout the course of the day. And it's rich, and you dance. In Advaita Vedanta, you don't dance, or if you dance,
You
it's
dance so that you'll give up dancing at some point.
yes, or it's seen as Maya, or it's seen as less intelligent.
Yeah,
These are for the people who can't understand philosophy. They're not academic and they're
right.
not evolved.
In that point that you just bring up now is that okay, so you got this cute sentimental thing. No, no, no. There's volumes and volumes of dense philosophy that actually support this colorful, beautiful personal understanding.
You're dancing in the spiritual world. You're doing the end game right now in the neophyte game.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's
So
pretty
I
cool in
think
that
that's one thing
regard.
that's real special, yeah, about bhakti. And it does the question was how does it make your everyday life genuinely better and more joyful? Yeah, it brings in so much color and joy into one's life. It's
And
nice.
also,
Like for instance, I remember once I had a guest in my home, visited my, kind of knocked on the door and came. Not they weren't staying in my home, but they just visited. While my wife was doing her puja, they came in
mm,
and they said, "This is incredible." Said, my wife was singing this beautiful Sanskrit poetry, and before beautifully decorated deities, and offering flowers, and there was a aroma of sandalwood and flowers and fragrant oils in the air, and the person was like, "This is incredible!" Like that doesn't happen in an average person's home, but this happens
yeah.
every morning in a bhakti yogi's home.
Every morning, me and Mara are sitting down. We're massaging, beautiful black stones with oil,
Yeah.
while she's singing or speaking Sanskrit prayers, or we're listening to Sanskrit prayers. We're singing songs. We're lighting incense. We're offering a ghee lamp. The ritual is not just sort of like, well, here's my sacred dresser, and here's a obsidian and rose quartz and a piece of wood I found on the beach and a shell. It's like there's like rituals that go with it. The rituals have an intention behind it. They're fresh, they're revisited every morning. They're not done rotely. You're singing songs. It's musical, it's sensual, like you're smelling the food that you're offering, you're cutting the food. She's walking outside gathering the flowers. That's a meditation in itself. So yeah, you're absorbing the senses, the minds, the body, and everything in an offering to a beautiful being in hopes they enjoy it, and that itself is very enjoyable.
Mm. All right. Well, there you go.
That was great. Should we move on to the second question?
Let's.
Yes.
Chapu writes, she's asking for a gem from your teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking about your spiritual teachers, your acharyas, can you share one specific story or episode with them that truly helped you grow, or a profound lesson they taught you that has always stuck with you?
Okay. What you got, Raghu?
What you go? When do you go first?
Want me to go first? I think I've
Yeah.
shared the story once before on the podcast, but I'll share it again. There's so many that I could say, but here, if there's a lesson to be, I'll tell the story, but I'll share the lesson first. But the lesson is that in bhakti, in spirituality, right, in life in general, things should be done with a fully invested heart. You know, I mean, how much of our lives do we walk around the world in, with a heart not fully invested in what we're doing? And if you actually practice bhakti, you can fully invest your heart at every step, at every stage of your day, because it's all connected. But it becomes kind of it becomes drained of all life if the heart isn't fully invested in it. So I'll tell this story, and that was when I was a brahmachari monk, and I would I would go to Vrindavan every year, to the holy place in India, and I would live there in the same little house with my guru. And that little home, it was kind of like a little nexus of devotional activity, because uh, beyond, for so many reasons, but one reason was because every meal there are guests invited. My guru would always eat with guests, right? So there's always a schedule of guests coming in for breakfast, coming in for lunch, and just like a whole scene in the preparation of the meal and the serving of the meal and the conversations that would take place. It was always exciting in one sense, you know. And one morning, my guru asked me to invite someone to come, and so I went off to invite them. And when I invited them, I said, "Oh, my Guru Maharaj would be very honored if you could come and have breakfast this morning." And the guests said, "Oh, I just can't make it this morning. I've got to do this and do that. But thank him for me." It was like that. I said, "Okay." And then I went back, and then later he asked me, "Is that person coming for breakfast today?" And I said, "Oh no, he said he had something else to do." And then he just looked at me, and you and both you and I have shared stories about how he could look at you, and he would take every opportunity to use it as a reason to reform you, you know, in some way, to cut away at some thick kind of haze that you live in, and you've been living in for years and years. And he said, your problem is that you're like a peon. You just, you get some instruction to do and you just do it as if you had no real personal investment in it. He said, that's not bhakti. Bhakti means, like when you're serving with a heart that's fully invested because of the love that you have for the person that you're serving. We don't just serve God, we serve God with a heart full of love. And it's actually the love that's accepted, not the service. And he said, I've asked you to invite that person because I really want that person to come. And if you really wanted that person to come as much as I do, that person would be coming. But you're just a peon. You just go and deliver the message. Your heart's not in it. It was like that, He said, now go back, and ask him again. And so I did. And this time I said, he would really love to have you there. You're so dear to him. And, I went in, invested in it. And they said, oh, okay, well, then I'll come,
Mm.
And that's something that I've always carried that story with me, and that lesson with me, that we don't just become these mechanical people. Even when we come to a practice that's all about the softening of the heart and the experience of genuine divine spiritual emotion, because we're habituated to move through this world, we get stuck right from the beginning of our life, go to school, do the stuff that your heart's not in. And you just get habituated to moving through life with a heart not fully invested in what you're doing. Why should we live a moment, where our heart's not fully invested in what we're doing? Everything that we do should be tied into that central purpose. And if it is, then we can always be serving with a full heart, and life becomes much more rich and much more meaningful.
Wow, that's beautiful. I can tell a beautiful one,
Okay.
and well, yours is beautiful, but it's coming from Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he's the great chiseler. He chisels down. He's the archaeologist that cuts through the stone to find the gold, and a lot of that stone is our big obtuseness or our false ego. So I can tell one of his stories. But there was in thinking of this, there was a very sweet exchange which stays with me today. I
Okay.
remember before I started Shelter, I was thinking about doing Shelter because I had been in a band. The band was successful. I was a spokesperson. We had, tens of thousands of followers who became straight edge. And I was sitting in the car driving to Gita Nagari with Rabindra Sarup Prabhu. And he's been like a guru to me too, and a very wise person. Back then, he was 50 years old. If you were 50 back then, you were the oldest person in the Hare Krishna movement.
Yeah.
So as we were driving, I said, Prabhu, I used to be a singer in a band. It was really popular. Like, he didn't know anybody from the straight edge world, really.
Okay.
It's like, I used to be really a singer in a band. It was really popular. I bet I could do it again, but for Krishna. And we could travel around and we can get people to join, and I did a record label, and I bet I could do the same thing for Krishna. And I was just sort of like going into it and telling my like excitement about it. And he did something super sweet. And he just put his arm around me while he was driving. And he just said, I'm sure you could do that. I think you would be great at that. And that like little type of just like sweet
Go forth, young man.
validation, just sweet validation, it stayed with me. And to this day, if people tell me about a dream they have, my answer is, I hear them, I listen to them, and I say, you would be great at that. That would be great. You would, because sometimes people just need a little bit of
Hmm.
encouragement
Yeah.
and validation, and you never know what you're unleashing in a person. So that sometimes sweet, gentle encouragement is super powerful. But the one that first came to my mind was your guru also, when we were living in Potomac, and the situation, but I'll share with everybody else. There was 10 brahmacharis with Gunagrahi Goswami who would go out to the Washington D.C. mall, and they would chant Hare Krishna, and they would chant sort of like in a modern way, like Maharaj had these electronic drums,
Yep.
Shankar Shan had a synthesizer or something, and someone would have a mridanga, but it was sort of like, to me,
Pop,
it was sort.
pop kirtan kind of thing.
It's like a pop kirtan, Josie and the Pussycats type of like,
There was a tambourine, I think.
it was like a tambourine. And to me, it was very, I just became a devotee. So for me, this was like, I respect the
Corny.
holy day, but this is not cool. This is just not cool. But I want to support it. So I played the role of the background guy. So I would wake up before them, and I would prepare so I could finish my round, so I could make everybody breakfast. Then I would make them lunch and pack them lunch, and then or bring them. I'd drive lunch to them. Then I'd drive back, make the dinner, and then clean up after dinner. And it was a very exhausting backup job. And the only person that was back at the house with me was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So I had a lot of his time. Privately, he talked to me a lot. And so one day he called me in his room with Gunagrahi Maharaj. And I was pretty damn green back then. And he called me into his room and he said,
Tomorrow.
Gunagrahi, I want to know why Bhakti Ray isn't out chanting at the mall with everybody.
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he goes, Bhakti Ray, do you have any reason why you're not going out chanting? And I go, well, I'm doing the backup work. It's like I make them breakfast, I make them lunch, I go back out.
I played this
And
essential role in the
it's
background.
you gotta somebody's got to do that. And he goes, "That's not what I'm actually asking about." And I explained myself again, and then you could just tell he just wasn't satisfied by my answer. Then Gunagar Maharaj goes, on Bhakta Ray's defense, he's doing a lot of work and it's really needed. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he just lost his cool and he looks at me and he goes, that's not my point. My point is, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think that Bhakta Ray does not think going out and chanting the holy name is important, and his ego as a rock star is too big, and he just doesn't want to put his ego on the line. Isn't that the truth, Bhakta Ray? It's not because of your great piety that you want to do the background support work, but out there, you're a nobody, Hare Krishna, and here you can sit and hide. Isn't that the truth? And I freaking broke into tears. And I was just like,
It's
that
true.
is absolutely the truth. That is absolutely the truth. And he goes, and that's why tomorrow you're not going to cook anything. You're going to get out in that van and you're going to chant the holy name. And I was just like, oh, God, he got me. And so my real lesson is not to just share that humiliating story about my ego getting crashed, which is a beautiful thing, but there is a way that we can practice bhakti very safely. And there is a way that we can take great chances and get out on the limb to grab the fruit. And we see that in our acharyas, right? We see that in Raghunath and Kaustubha, my namesake, who he grew up in a very, very pious, very religious, very well-to-do Hindu family, and he walked away from it to be with Lord Chaitanya. He gave up everything. It broke all social customs within Hinduism. Family is everything within Hinduism. He broke away from it. Then we have people like Srila Prabhupada, who was like, he was good. Everything was good. He had taken sannyas. He was very focused. He had a support of God brothers. He could have just stayed in Vrindavan, and everything would have been good. And he went on a limb and lived in the Lower East Side with a bunch of crazies. And because of it, our lives are changed forever. And so there's a lot of, I'm not saying he pushed into his ego, but there are risks we can take, and especially for people like myself, conditioned souls, that so many other people will benefit from if I step out of my comfort zone. And it's very easy to live comfortably. Maybe it isn't. Maybe in Kali Yuga is not easy to live comfortably. But some of us have crafted a comfort for ourselves, and we've crafted a comfort zone for ourselves, and we've even put our bhakti into our comfort zone. And when I hear people like Amy Steller, I don't think she's on the podcast today, but she listens regularly, and here she is. She's New Jersey mom. You know, if there is like a stereotype, I could say she's a New Jersey mom. She's got kids and teenagers and stuff like that. And she's going into like the local parking lot and chanting Hare Krishna on a harmonium with a bunch of Indian devotees from the temple. I always think like, I love the fact that this woman is throwing her whole ego on the line.
Right.
And there's something very beautiful about that. And there's some, we should ask ourselves, we may not have a Tamal Krishna Maharaj in our life to like say, that this is where you're short-sighted, Bhakta Ray. But maybe you can just say a prayer to Prabhupada. Is there some way that I can step out of my comfort zone and do something that is going to affect not just me, but the greater good? And you and I know that. Like your whole service was out of your comfort zone. You know, no one wants to, unless they're getting paid for it, you know, by the numbers of books they sell. No one wants to go on the street, approach people who don't want to talk to them and sell them hardbound, heavy, you know, Bhagavatams and Bhagavad Gitas, and get humiliated and get made fun of. No one wants to do that unless there's like some higher mission, higher payback, higher return on investment. And that's what you did for years. You lived simply, you controlled your mind, and you did it despite. It's not like, okay, if I distribute 100 books today, I'm going to get a bonus. You get no bonus. Krishna just wants to see that you're doing it with love. So stepping out of that comfort zone, you affected so many people. me debating a bunch of atheists at a shelter contest. It was a pain in the neck to get, meat thrown at us on, on tour and all the stuff you go through in playing and performing and dealing with a bad sadhana. But these are like austerities we perform. What are the austerities in bhakti we can perform that are going to benefit people, that are going to benefit people outside my comfort zone? And maybe that can be a good prayer for people today. Like, Krishna, where do you want me to take this today? How can I
Nice.
turn this up a notch? And the magic is you get some reciprocation from Guru, from the devotees, and truthfully from Mahaprabhu, from Lord Chaitanya, from the six Goswamis. You're getting a whole disciplic succession of the whole disciplic succession is cheering you on when you step out of that comfort zone.
Mm,
You feel special mercy flowing down. That is for sure.
nice, Raghu.
That's my story. Bhakti Ray.
He said, I go out there every day. You think you've got fans? I've got disciples all over the world that'll do anything for me, but I go out there and I'm a nobody when I'm out there, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
All right.
All right, you ready for your next question?
Please.
Yes.
Okay. Your favorite divine story. You both dive deep into incredible stories from the Vedic wisdom. Is there a particular pastime or story that's your all-time favorite to read or share, and what makes it so special to you?
Raghu, you or me?
You go first.
I would say that there's a chapter that I particularly love. And you know what? Honestly, you could pick any chapter. You could go
Right.
Brahma
Anything,
Mohan
you
Leela.
can
It could be
just
this one, it could be
dive
that one.
into it.
Yeah. But there's one chapter that's so rich, and that's the first chapter of the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita,
Really?
which,
I wasn't expecting you to say this.
No?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Because it actually begins with one beautiful story that I don't understand the connection why it's in the chapter. That's something worth investigating, because then it just goes off into a whole different subject. But it opens up with the story of the great devotee Shivananda Sain and how he cared for this dog, right? So there's that. But then it shifts. And the title of the chapter, I think, is Srila Rupa Goswami's second meeting with Sri Chaitanya. And it talks about this most important saint in our tradition, Rupa Goswami. Not just saint, but acharya, teacher. Like he's there's no more. We're called Rupa Anugas because we follow him. We follow him and how he taught, how he lived, how he taught. And he's a young man at this time, and he comes to Jagannath Puri where Sri Chaitanya is there, surrounded by so many associates of so many different varieties. From like the super elevated writers and poets and thinkers and philosophers, even like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who's the guru of the king, Ramananda Roy, who was like a governor of a huge state, but is like the most, aesthetically, he's this brilliant playwright. You have Swarup Damodar Goswami, who's like, in a sense, the secretary to Sri Chaitanya. He's this incredibly brilliant sannyasi that knows everything about the subtleties of bhakti. So these are like super highly respected people in the society, known for their learning and for their incredibly refined tastes. And then you have someone like Haridas Thakur, who's in one sense like a simple, he's not seen in society like that, right? He's an unknown in a sense, right? He was born in a Muslim family. He lives in a hut off to the side, right? He considers himself not worthy to be part of this exalted associate. He's kind of quiet about everything. But of course, Sri Chaitanya visits him every day. And Rupa Goswami is a young man stepping into that, but he's incredibly qualified in every way. And he's in the process of writing an incredibly beautiful, rich drama about the life of Krishna. And when he goes to stay there, he feels very insignificant. And so he stays with Haridas Thakur in his hut. And there's so much in this chapter about, one, the relationships. And here there is the idea of like an etiquette, with the hierarchy and everything, but there's love flowing in all directions, from the way that an elder man like Haridas Thakur greets and warmly welcomes a young renunciate in Rupa Goswami, how Sri Chaitanya loves Haridas Thakur so much that he's coming to his home every afternoon, how he warmly greets and introduces, he kind of welcomes Rupa Goswami into the fold of all these exalted bhakti yogis and glorifies him and introduces him to everyone. How he recognizes the, just like you were saying, how when in a sense, in one sense, how you were saying when Ravindra Prabhu put his arm around you and said, you'd be really good at that. Sri Chaitanya recognizes the unique skill and beauty in the writings of Rupa Goswami. And he calls his exalted associates, you need to hear what he's written. You've got to hear this. And so he's encouraging Rupa Goswami, read your poetry for us, read your drama to us. And he's so humble. They ask him to sit on the same platform. He refuses to do so. Rupa Goswami's, no. They're trying to drag it out. And as they push him and get him to finally start to reveal verses, the verses have so much, they're incredibly rich poetically, incredibly rich philosophically, incredibly rich aesthetically. And everybody, there's not a drop of jealousy within the Sangha. Everybody is just like so impressed and so happy to hear these verses and so happy for him. And they're saying there's no way that he could have written like the one real message that really comes across in this chapter is the idea of empowerment. There's no way that he could have written like this unless he was especially empowered by you. And so everybody's celebrating his contribution. And he's making his contribution without a drop of pride. And so, but all of that background is just a way of framing these incredibly beautiful verses, which are just like the chapters, just pouring them out. In one sense, all of that is just framework to hear the verses themselves, which are the most beautiful, rich writings of love. They're all included in that chapter. And then at the end of the chapter, his poetry is revealing the heart of Sri Chaitanya. There's so. How did you know my heart? You get to hear about the devotional heart of Sri Chaitanya. And in the end, he empowers him. He says, now you go forward, you go to Vrindavan, and you excavate the holy sites there, and you write books. And to this day, we benefit by reading the books that he was ordered to write. But it was through that empowerment. There's a lot in there about that theme of empowerment, how one can become an instrument of divine will. And so that chapter is just beautiful and rich on so many levels. That I suppose you could say that's a favorite of mine.
It's amazing how you can go anywhere with that. We could do a whole podcast on tell us a pastime.
Yeah,
there's just so many good stories with so many good lessons and so many. And the first thing that came to me was this beautiful. It's not a beautiful story. It's like a tragic story. It's both in the Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata. Now you can imagine, you got to put yourself. Sometimes we read stories and we don't fully feel them, but you could imagine there's a war going on, and people are living in fear, especially the vulnerables. And who are the vulnerables in a war, especially in those days, were the women and the children.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the war, and the Pandava side is clearly going to win this. And in a desperate attempt to get the last sting in for the enemy's side,
Avenge the death of his father.
to avenge the death of his father also, Ashvatthama, who's on the other side, he's the son of Drona, and Drona was the teacher fighting against the Pandavas. He comes in and he kills the sleeping children of Draupadi.
Okay.
And
Which are the sons of the Pandavas?
the sons of the
One son of each of
Pandavas,
them.
they all die, and he kills them, children, while they're sleeping. It's considered heinous, and he brought the head. It's such a gory scene. He brings the heads to his
Skulls.
master, who's Duryodhana,
Yeah.
and Duryodhana says, "These are the children. You thought you killed the Pandavas. These are the children." She's like, "This is a disgusting." Even his own master, the master of evil himself, Duryodhana, was so disgusted by this.
Yeah.
And when the Pandavas found out, and when Draupadi found out, you could imagine the tears and the broken hearts and the crying that went on. And Arjuna just set after Ashvatthama to capture him. And he was brought in front of Draupadi, in front of Krishna, in front of Bhima, one of the fathers of the children. And what is the punishment for this person? Like, Arjuna's ready to punish him. He's caught him. He said, "What is the punishment?" And Krishna said, "For this offender, you must kill him." Bhima said, "Kill him immediately." And Draupadi stepped in, the mother of these children who were, going through hell. And she just demonstrates this forgiveness and soft heart of a devotee, where she said, "If you kill him, I know his mother, and I don't want to have anyone experience the pain that I'm going through right now. And so you can punish him, but do not kill him." And instead of punishing him, they cut off half his mustache. Like, that's a
Killed his ego.
punishment. Come on. And it was like, wow, the devotees have so much mercy. They're filled with, even in horrible situations where your children have died. I mean, if you can really just understand that story quicker than the few verses it is, and really dig deep in what that pain and the grief that you must go through when you lose a child, and immediately forgiving with barely any time to experience that grief, but you're going to forgive because you don't want anyone else to feel that pain. It's like Draupadi, the power that devotees have. And that's why it's such a big, important part of our movement is we have to give service to the devotees. There's two facets of this. Serve the devotees and don't offend the devotees, because the devotees are so deeply connected to Krishna. There's such a power there that you're either going to, rub the magic lamp, or you're going to run over the magic lamp with a steamroller. It's like, what are you going to do here? We say serve the devotees, rub the magic lamp, and all your heart's dreams get fulfilled. You get the highest thing. You get Krishna Prema. You get Krishna Bhakti by serving the Vaishnavas. Hanuman set the example. Draupadi sets the example. Arjuna sets the example. Radha sets. They're all setting great examples for us to serve to be of service. And then, of course, this is why we have these, the great personalities in our life. This is why we have teachers in our life. This is why we have devotees in our life. This is why we have a sangha. It gives us a chance to serve the devotees. And if I keep that at the forefront of my mind, we're not just going to isolate ourselves from God, but we're training ourselves to see God in other people. And the worst thing that we can do, and this is I just heard a great class from Raghunath Swami. I should post it. Mara, post that class on the message board.
I can put it up if you like.
Yeah, put it up on the message board. It was such a good class yesterday. I was listening to it on my drive to Palm Coast yesterday. How you can't criticize the devotees. It is like you're running over. It's like you've been giving a magic lamp, and you're going to run over that lamp with a steamroller. Because the devotees have such magic invested in them, in their love. And you're going to find the fault, what they've done wrong, and you're going to broadcast that to the world. That's what you're going to do with your intelligence? You fool. You're ruining your life. and everybody that hears your toxic messages are going to be ruined. You gotta we gotta control our tongues in Kali Yuga before you start blaspheming. Well, yeah, but he shouldn't have done this. That's none of your business unless you're in a position to do something about it. You got to be really careful who you offend, because and you got to be 100% sure what you're saying is true. And even if you're true, you got to be careful about. I don't want to put myself in that position because we ruin our spiritual life. Um, and he gave so many examples in this class that you know. Vitrasura, in the big part of the so much parts of the Bhagavatam, he's the demon. He's fighting Indra, but he actually has a heart of gold.
Yeah.
And he,
Boy, that's a pastime we
but,
could have chosen.
Bhishma Dev, grandfather Bhishma, is fighting on the enemy's side,
Fighting against
but
Krishna.
he's one of the Mahajans. He's one of the great souls that we remember today. Then you have Prabhupada disciples who came with Prabhupada, who are now leaders in our movement, but they were what you would call a card-carrying demons, in the point like they ate meat, they killed cat, they might have been a butcher, they might have broken all the regular principles. So it's like you got to be careful. You don't know who you're dealing with. You don't know who you're dealing with. And when people come to bhakti, you don't know the spiritual potency that is behind them, or if they have to just suffer through some stage in life that we can't understand. So we say play it safe, people. Give dignity and respect to everybody. And if you have some question about a person's integrity, reserve your flapping gums, hold your tongue, and maybe internalize it. And oftentimes we just criticize just out of sport. And there's no return on investment. In fact, there is devastation. There's potential real devastation for our spiritual life. And this is Mahaprabhu's message. I highly recommend everybody listen to this class by Radhanath Swami.
That pastime that you just brought up, that narration in the Bhagavatam about Ashvatthama and how to deal with him. It's such a fascinating pastime. There's so much in it, so much that you can talk about, right? Because for so many reasons. But there was Arjuna is often showed as this servant who was so fully heart invested that his intelligence was just kind of illuminated, and that he could come up with the answer when no one could come up with the answer, right? He understood what others didn't understand. Like we see it when the different students of Drona were asked to look up into the tree and tell me what you see. And everybody said, I see the tree, I see the bird, and Arjuna's like, I just see the bird. And tell me about the bird, I just see its eye. It was like, and how thrilled his guru was with his focus. We see when Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows and he needed water, Arjuna was the one that understood what to do. We see that, winning the hand of Draupadi at the Swayamvara ceremony, it was only Arjuna that understood how to do it and could do it. There's many places like that where Arjuna is put under pressure and is able to accomplish what seems to be impossible. And that was another one of those instances where he captures Ashvatthama and brings Ashvatthama back to the Pandavas and Krishna. And Krishna says, kill him. And Bhima says, kill him.
You're all saying kill him.
And
Krishna is saying kill him. God himself has appeared on earth and saying kill this guy.
And then Draupadi says, don't kill him. And then Yudhishthira's like, yeah, Draupadi's right, don't kill him. And then Arjuna's like, well, what do I do? And then he looks at Krishna. Krishna's like, now we've seen Krishna swaying. And this is such an important point because we become so convinced that we know what's right and wrong, what's dharmic and what's adharmic. And here's Krishna swaying. Huh?
You're embellishing everything I said you're bringing out so much more meaning in the things I said.
There's so much meaning in it. But the reason why I'm saying all this is actually because, was it yesterday? Day before yesterday? Yesterday, day before. I went to B&H, electronics in New York.
Yeah, you love that place, don't you?
I don't love that place. No, but I'll tell you something. It used to be you go to B&H and you just get the worst service. It would just be like they were so rude to you, you
Oh,
know?
really?
It was like
Really?
brutal, you know? It
Is
had
that
a
the place that's
reputation.
run by all Hasidic Jews and
It's
they're
all
all
Hasidic Jews, and it's
dressed
kind of
in
like I think you and I have talked in the past about like if you go to a music store, like sometimes the people that work there are just so arrogant
they're
and everything.
arrogant. Those
Yeah.
guys who
Go
work
to
at
bicycle stores,
y-
like they look down.
arrogant bicyclists. I
Yeah,
hate those
they
guys.
got this. And B&H used to be brutal. It had a brutal reputation for just,
It's
you know.
bad preaching for the Hasidic Jews.
Well, but I think they've changed. My impression is that they all got together and they said, you know what, we got to treat people nicer or something like that because it's a much nicer scene there now.
Mm,
And so I was waiting, I was buying a printer, and that place works like a well-oiled machine. It's insane. You know, it's like you sit there, you have someone help you, and then they type something in, and then then you go stand in line, and they got like all these conveyor belts going, and the thing like shows up like that. You know, it's a
mm.
huge operation. But in any case, I was talking to this Hasidic Jew who was, typing this stuff in, and then we just started. And these guys are like just the most full-on native New Yorkers you're ever going to meet in your life, right?
Right.
And so we just started talking, and because it was like Friday afternoon, and they close early on Friday, like for Jewish holidays. And then there's a holiday coming up, you know. They take all they'll shut down for a week, for 2 weeks, because it's the
For Jewish
religious holiday.
holidays.
Yeah,
We can appreciate that.
yeah. And so I said, well, what's the holiday coming up? And then he told me the holiday, and I said, and how do you celebrate that? And the holiday, he says, it's the giving of the Torah, right? It's the holiday that recognizes the giving. And he says, sometimes people stay up all night. And I said, well, like you're reading the Torah? And he goes, not reading the Torah, discussing the Torah. Okay, not reading, discussing. He's like
It's like a TV show. It's
I
like a,
know. And I'm like, oh, discussing. He says, yeah, you got the Torah, and then you got like one commentary on one side, and then there's another commentary on the other side of the page, and then you're reading this, and you're getting into all the subtleties of this. It's a very intricate thing. He's like really like give me a whole lesson, you know. But that's one of the beautiful things about a pastime like that, and all these pastimes is these aren't just simplistic, childish, silly religious ideas. Whether you accept them or not, these are incredibly rich philosophically, incredibly rich theologically, and they have the power to transform lives.
mm,
All of this is beyond doubt. And so, whether it's the first chapter of the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or I'm forgetting, maybe it's chapter. Whatever the chapter is in the first canto where that pastime that you just told
yeah.
about Ashvatthama being captured. I think that might be like the seventh chapter or something, eighth.
Yeah.
But or any other chapter for that matter. This is we have like a gold mine, of just a treasure chest of Vaishnava literature that is entirely life-changing and life-enriching. It's there. Don't let it just sit on the shelf. Get some friends that you can read these with and relish them and learn from them and be transformed by them.
It's like the mysteries of the universe has fallen on our lap.
There it is, Raghunath. There it is.
Right on our lap. It's not like you're having a day. It's right in front. It's like might even be on your bookshelf right now. It's like I'm not going to read it because I'm too busy. I'm not going to read the mysteries of the universe. I'm busy today. I've got to go to Home Depot. Come on.
Henry's here saying about B&H. He says, "Oh, they were brutal 30 years ago." It's so true. It was like you went in there and just got insulted. And,
We
it's
should
like,
start a Hare Krishna B&H, a Hare Krishna Home
that would be
Depot. Hey, you
incredible.
want plumbing? Sure. Let's go to plumbing.
well, Alachua would be the place to do it.
Well, I went to not Albertsons. What's it called, Mara?
Grocery
There.
store, Price Chopper,
There.
Not Wegmans, but the other one like that.
Union.
It's one of those
Circle K or
supermarkets
something.
here. No, isn't that Circle K? It's like their big. Henry, what is it? Anyway, it's where everybody shops, the big supermarket, and it's just
Key
filled with
food.
the
No.
it's a bunch of devotees just
Publix.
walking around chanting Hare Krishna in the store. I was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Well, if you go to Home
Publix,
Depot,
right?
Publix.
Oh, no, if you go to Lowe's, you'll see
Panorama.
Panorama.
Raghunath working there. You should just go pop in on him today, right?
Yeah. I won't, but I'm not gonna. I've got a day planned today. I'm gonna go to Jagged Harry's for lunch with Rocco.
Oh, that's
Gonna go on a mandate with my son,
okay.
and then I'm gonna go to the Sunday feast.
Look at you. Look at you.
Forward to it. I'm gonna leave tomorrow morning.